Hello there, Ron Arnold is my name, and welcome to a Sky Racing special. In August next year, 2025, it brings up 50 years for me since I first walked into the doors of the NCA in greyhound racing administration. Straight away I learnt some names and met some people that have walked with me for the last 5 decades. In the media world, names like Paul Ambrosoli and Jeff Collison, and in the participant and training point there was Alan and June Wheeler. The name Wheeler has been with me for those last 50 years. Absolute special lady is here this evening because in 1975 one of the sons of Alan and June Wheeler, Paul, married a young girl by the name of Jan, and it is humbling and a pleasure to have with us today Jan Wheeler. Welcome, Jan.
Thanks, Ron.
Let's go back to 1975. How did you become involved in the greyhound world?
Well, Paul and I went to school together. We started dating and started taking me around to his property of a weekend, and we'd go out together after he'd finished work. And he'd sort of throw me in one of the kennels and lock the gate and stop the dogs from jumping on me. And that didn't last very long. After that it was, here, you go do it, and push me in, and then I'd do the dogs, and then we'd go out together.
Obviously in that period, Alan and June had a lot of successful dogs. They won a couple of derbies with Steel Flex, and then obviously Winifred Bale come along in the early 80s, Greyhound of the Year both 82 and 83. Highly successful. 1987 was a year that we had some changes in greyhound racing. Of course, Harold Park closed, the big reopening of Wentworth Park. Not long after, in early November, Alan passed away. Obviously the family would have been shocked by that. How did Paul react from the business side and the farm side?
Well, hit him really hard. I couldn't even get close to him at that time for a little while, but 2 days after his dad passed, we were racing, we had dogs in, and he come down and he said, we really need to do this, it's what Dad would have wanted, we're going. So we packed up the dogs and we went racing that night.
And obviously he immediately looked at the operation. I know when I was on panels with him in the early 90s, he realised that at the Oaks you had to have a lot more dogs there to make the big picture.
You did. And he said to me, we've got 2 choices. We can either sell up and relax, retire, semi-retire, or we can give it a go. And I said, what do you want to do? And he said, I would never forgive myself if I didn't give it a go. So we did, and we struggled for a long time, and then we turned the corner and we had 10 of the most amazing years I think we could ever have in greyhound racing.
And obviously the breeding line was a very big thing with Paul. Alan and June had the Gales Beauty line, but Paul seemed to correct that or aim to look at a different line over time. Obviously plenty of travel to Ireland and the USA. So obviously there were great relationships built over in those places.
Oh, for sure, and I've still got them to this day. There's a few people in Canada at the moment that want me to go over and visit. He needed to strengthen the line. The only way to do that is outcrosses, so he tried every outcross he could try. We went for holidays to Hawaii and spent our time at quarantine stations trying to get frozen semen in, but that's what you do when that's your life. And
obviously probably mid-90s there was obviously the thought then we need to get bigger again, and obviously then the property Uringo near Young was the one that popped up. It wouldn't have been an easy move because you've obviously got children around and plenty of dogs to start with, so the transition was a slow one to get anywhere near what you are today, and obviously the conditions even living as a husband and wife would have been difficult.
It was. We lived in a shed for 8 years so that we could get the air conditioning and the heating and the kennels all done as they would. He will tell you it was 12 months, but I know it was 8 years. I ticked off every Christmas. And when he decided we'd build a house, that was more for my mum and dad because they were living with us at the time, and he said maybe we should build the house now before it's too late for your mum and dad. Well, it turned out it was too late for my dad. Just as we turned the soil, he passed away, but Mum came and lived with us until 6 months after I lost Paul, then I lost Mum.
Now on the property itself, over time, how many dogs have you got there now, sort of thing?
We have between 500 and 600 at any one time, but that's from babies up, so newborns, preschool.
And there's obviously quite a few retires.
And we have 20 to 30 old ones walking around at any one time. We could have more, but we try not to have too many out. but we will put some in the paddocks so that they can run and enjoy the day. And half the time they don't want to come back over, they want to stay over there in the paddocks because they're enjoying the running free and running in the dams and doing
And
their
what
own
sort of
thing.
facilities do you have on the property itself, outside of obviously the property yards?
We have a full circle track, which is an identical replica of Wentworth Park. We have a straight track. That's all we have for break-in facilities. We don't have anything else, any bull rings or anything like that. And we have a brood bitch section, we have a pre-training section, we have puppy yards on the other side, and newborn babies on this side, 2 whelping rooms with 12 kennels in each room.
Now, one of your major roles personally is whelping of the litters.
And it's my joy. It's my happy place. I don't like getting up in the middle of the night to go and do it, but once I'm there, I love it. It's just me, the mums and the babies, and it's a beautiful
The
space.
very first time you whelped a litter, what was that feeling like?
Yeah, Paul sort of tended to throw you in sink or swim. So he just said, yeah, this bitch is whelping, in you go. It's all yours, good night, see you later. And that's the way it was from then on. But it was overwhelming at the first. Of course, the first one I panicked. I've learned over the years not to panic because you'll see all sorts of things over the years. But I do enjoy the space. It's where I'm happiest.
Beautiful. Obviously, it's literally more than a litter a week probably in normal times.
I can whelp up to 4 litres a night, which is very tiring, but then it's better than 4 litres in 4 nights. At least I get 3 nights sleep. I just spend 1 night doing it all. But the girls are pretty good, you know, they know what they're doing.
And do you have individual staff that then take over dogs at different ages? Is there different staff that looks after the pups and then
Yeah.
trainers and that type of thing, breakers?
Yeah, I have all the girls work with me and the young pups. The older ones, when they go over to the other side, the boys deal with those because they get a bit rough and big then. And then another section will do the pre-trainers and the break-ins.
And as far as breaking the dogs in, roughly how many dogs would you break in a normal week? If normally it's a 1 month process?
Brendan he'll pick whatever groups we've got. So if we've got a large group, he'll do a large group, but he might split it in 2, or he might do 2 smaller groups, depending on how many are in each group and how many pups are in each litter.
All right. And as far as your litters, what's the biggest litter size that you've whelped?
I've had 14. I saved 13 of them. I did lose 1, but that was 2 years ago now.
All right. So obviously your connections overseas have been a big thing. Paul sort of found the line that started to strengthen the breed. When do you sort of really sense that he was on the right path there?
He tried everything. He tried all different ones. But then when they started winning, well, of course then you know. But he also tried the coursing dogs in Ireland, and everybody thought we were nuts. And he said, you don't breed for this generation, you breed for the next generation. So you may not get winners in this lot, and you can do it when you've got a lot of dogs. Of course, people with just a few can't do that, but you have to breed for the next generation.
And I remember, I suppose he was always looking for that Group 1 dog to really step up, and Canton Bale was probably the first of the ones that really stepped up, and he had a huge opinion of that dog. And I remember him telling me that this was going to be the one that put the stud on the world, but unfortunately Canton couldn't do the job properly there. And it's awkward because you've still got the name there of those dogs looking to be that big stud dog. And it did eventually happen, but it took a hell of a long time for him.
It did take a long time. He was starting to think it wasn't going to happen because, Canton was we thought was going to be our special stud dog. We tried everything, Stud Masters tried everything, but it wasn't to be. But he still lived his life out with us, eating his Vegemite toast every day.
Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen. A super spreader, Canton Bale, wins the cup by 4 lengths.
With me is Jan Wheeler, and we're going to touch base on the champion greyhounds the Wheeler breed has had. I started to run out of names on the bit of paper, but let's just go through some of them. Fanta Bale obviously was a special one, and I believe that greyhound is still in your house.
She is, and she's she knows she's special. She looks at herself to say, you know who I am, right? Like, I can have whatever I want when she comes into the staff room to have her biscuits of a morning. She was special in so many ways. I mean, what other greyhound can win over a Group 1 over every distance? Not many can do that.
Yeah. And then obviously the Exilia Allens, Dinah Double Ones, Barcia Bale. There was a roll on there when it was just enormous, the success rate of the line and the dogs and the trainers that you have too. They play a major part in the whole success story.
A massive part, and we really looked hard for our trainers before we started sending them out. It was a hard decision, and it was one we made not reluctantly, but with a lot of thought going into it. But Exilia Allen was my special.
Did Paul ever sort of go, I'd like to train a few myself? And
well, he did early on. He trained all the Dapto 100,000 except for JB. He was mine. But he did. He got to the point where he just enjoyed the breeding so much that that's what he wanted to do. And then when we sent them out to trainers, he said, how good's this? We can sit here in the rain and watch them go around. We don't get wet. So he got to the point where his enjoyment was going through the stud books every night, and he did till the last night, checking on new breeds that he could come up with. And if they weren't ours, you know, if they were doing good, then we'd try and duplicate what they were doing and find reasons why they were doing so well, and then do the same thing.
So those pups were reared at your place, you would break them in, and then the decision would be made which part of Australia and which trainers they'd be sent to.
Our trainers seemed to think at the beginning that we singled out special trainers for special dogs. We have never done that. We have Brendan could tell you today which pups in the pup yards are going to which trainers, because they're just the next ones in succession that are due to get those pups that will get those pups. It's the trainers that make them. And
certainly, and again, in all states, when you turn the television on, there's a wheeler dog going around somewhere in that breeding line. In every race, it's quite amazing with that. And the success through that period from 2010 for 7 or 8 years, it was just amazing. Obviously highlighted by 2011 in a Melbourne Cup. You've run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of the 8. It's something that will never be achieved again.
It was an amazing night, but my aim is to have 8. One day maybe we'll do that.
All right, now as far as the dogs are concerned, there is one that I haven't mentioned yet. I'm going to leave him towards the end. Everyone's probably wondering why I haven't mentioned him, but he's not forgotten well and truly, but he'll get a Guernsey later on. In those earlier days, obviously the Winifred Bales and all that, I suppose that showed Paul what the real Group 1 dogs could do. Publicity, popularity for the sport themselves as much as the kennel, and that's why you probably strive so hard to find them, and until sort of Canton come along, that was the tick of the box.
It was the starting point.
Was he a greyhound that when he was broken in that you know, Paul thought he's got a bit of extra ability? Well,
actually I was thinking about that the other day. There was him and his brother, and his brother was actually better than him, and we sent him out to Graham and we said, how's he going? And he said, well, actually Canton's doing better. And he just progressively got better. And I think you find that sometimes if you have a dog that's really good at the beginning, there's nowhere for him to go, but one that's coming up beside him and doing that little bit better every time, he has that forge forward.
Yeah. And as far as the American line that come in, what was involved there in getting the bloodlines out here?
That was really hard. I mean, they were going to stop us registering them in New South Wales and racing them. And we had to get solicitors and barristers to help us do that. But we did. And now everybody can use them, which is great for the industry, isn't it?
And it's certainly something that it's bred on now. It just seems to be rolling on all the time.
Yeah, and I hope it continues. When they start shutting places down, it makes it hard to get them in. We're looking now at outsourcing new breed and lines in for us, and Brendan's always looking to see what we can find. We're trying all different ones at the moment. I don't know whether they're going to work or not, but Brendan's now decided that he can do it and he's doing a great job.
I suppose when you look now in the last few years, there's 3 or 4 races a year, $1 million to the winner. Paul would probably look back 10 years ago and think that never have happened, like all of us, but it's a big achievement to be able to have that prize money on offer now for people to make that expensive purchase and kick on into the sport.
It's amazing. I'd love to win one.
And it's encouraged a lot of the kennels themselves. You've seen, some large kennels now we've got in New South Wales in particular, and there are many hours involved. It's not 5 minutes work anymore. It's literally 7 days, 24 hours a day commitment, but at least there is some rewards there for those that end up with those few good dogs. And it's certainly no doubt something that you've had, and you'll get plenty more in that regard.
I hope so.
Jan, the month of June 2016, the Premier of New South Wales stood up and told us that greyhound racing was banned. What was Paul Wheeler's first reaction?
We just both looked at each other. We were in the kitchen at the time, and we just both looked at each other, and then the phone started ringing, and we just were in total shock. We could not believe that anyone would do this to these people that have a reason to get up every morning. They took that reason away.
As the next few weeks and months rolled on, did Paul and you discuss what the family may have to do if the sport was to be shut down? What were you going to move, or were you going to give it away, or what was happening?
We were tossing everything up. We thought, yes, we do have to give it away. We wondered what we were going to do with the dogs. We decided that we would just keep them there until we ran out of money, and just keep feeding them for as long as we could, and try and bring in money any way we could. We have 3,000 acres, so there's other means that we could have used, but we have no experience in any of those means, so it was really a devastating blow.
Paul was marvellous. Obviously I was involved in a lot of the discussions and protest meetings and all that, and Paul was forefront all the time. He was there speaking to the big crowd at Hyde Park and everything like that. So that was one advantage with Paul. He was happy to come out and speak and be able to promote the figures of accuracy, what dogs were how they were being looked after. And unfortunately we live in a bit of a world, Jan, that a lot of people don't think we look after greyhounds. Many say that greyhounds are looked after better than people. In many cases that is the case.
And that's exactly right. If you come to my place, you'd see our foreman has a doggy door down in his shed that we built for him to live in. He has 12 old girls go in with him every night, and the rest of them come in whenever they feel like it. They sleep above his head, they sleep all down his side, they sleep across him, and he bought beds for them for all around his room. And they live the best life. They're just so happy. The day Paul died, I walked over to the kennels, and the girls just looked at me like, what's happened? But they bring the happiness to you. They bring the joy.
Okay, that just leads me to the day, October 13, 2021. No doubt it would have started out a normal day in the Wheeler house.
Yeah, we were down in Sydney actually, just visiting our son. And it was really strange because we're sitting around the table with them, and I don't even know what came up, and I said to him, well, what's the date today? And he said, it's the 13th. And I said, I don't like 13. And he said, but it's not Friday the 13th, so it's not a bad day. And as it turned out, it was the worst day.
The immediate reaction from the family and yourself looking out with all those dogs, did you think you'd be able to continue it on?
At that point on that day, I couldn't think straight. I couldn't see past what was going to come the next day. And Brendan was just totally devastated. So it took us to the next day to continue to work, but it took us a few months to really work out what we were going to do. And I knew Brendan could do it, and I knew he knew everything that he needed to know, and I know Paul taught him everything, and he was letting him pick the sires at that time, so he was sort of one up on everything, and he knew what to do. But he needed to trust himself, and he now does that, and he now knows he can do that, and the dogs are successful now. But it was a time where, no, we weren't sure what was going to happen.
And obviously also his mum, June, she's still in the area with you? She's still out there in Young?
She's in Young, yeah.
Paul had those relationships with so many people around the country and overseas. The feeling back from them was was just something, everyone was devastated. And apart from the shock initially, but just everyone was worried what was going to happen next.
Do you know, I had a friend from Ireland, he's in his early 90s now, and he rang up absolutely devastated because he was a really close friend and he couldn't get here, and he was so worried that he couldn't get here that he wanted to watch it. And then he had a knee replacement, double knee replacement, not long before he passed, and I had the doctor ring me at 10 o'clock at night telling me he was the best patient he'd ever had. He loved seeing him, he made him laugh every day, and that kind of made you feel really good to think that he's touched so many lives. I had the vet, all the vet nurses, I had the carpenters from the house, I had the plumbers, I had the painters. They were all at his funeral and all told me that he was just like a dad to them, and that shows how many he touched.
That is. Now, fortunately he got to see Fernando Bale.
Yeah.
And 2015 is a year that many will remember, and I do myself, because he won 4 Group 1s at Wentworth Park and I stood alongside of him every time at the presentation. A National Derby, a Golden Easter Egg, a Peter Mossman, and the Nationals were in Sydney in that year. He became the wonderful sprinter, but then the rest of it's history as far as the stud dog, and we may never see another one of Fernando Bale's.
I don't think you will. I know at times there, Paul and I used to say, no, you can't say never. But just before he passed, he said to me, I think we can call it. I think he's the best ever. And now they call him the GOAT, and he has a rug to say he's the GOAT, and I don't think you'll find another one like him.
Well, I always grew up in our era with Zoom Top. And every time a good dog come along, I used to say, no, but it's not like Zoom Top. I got to be honest, 2015 I started to change, and I have changed now for the simple reason that his stud career's just taken him to another level as the complete greyhound.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got him in that top category. Now, of course, he was the first to go past the $1 million world, Adelaide Cup night, and there is a bit of a story behind Paul Wheeler trying to get to the track.
Yeah, he went down on his own, but he was in the car park and couldn't get inside, and the race had started. He said, I knew it had started, I heard everybody screaming, and he said, even though I couldn't get in there, it was the most emotional race I've ever been to, because they just screamed from the time the lids opened till he passed the finish post. And he said, and I never got to see it, I had to watch it on TV, but at least he was there.
You can already hear the crowd clapping. He's 5 in front, Fernando Bale of Lachlan Brown Shared Equity. He's the pin-up boy of greyhound racing in the world, and he's just about to exceed the $1 million. Fernando Bale wins the cup.
Now, Fernando, when he was a break-in dog, did anyone notice that he had exceptional ability? Or?
Well, we didn't think he was going to be like this. I mean, his first 5 race starts, he didn't do anything. And then it just clicked, which with a good dog it does. All of a sudden, something in the head just says, this is what I got to do. Yeah. And they do it. And he just clicked after that. He wasn't an outstanding dog breaking in. He was a good dog breaking in. And you would have thought, well, you know, we've got something, but we didn't know who's going to give us the ride of our life. And
obviously, trainers are an important part of it. Team Daly with that particular dog, it deserves a lot of ticks as well.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. So we give our trainers a group of dogs and we say to them, here you are, you sort them, you deal with them. We know which ones we think are going to make it. We've watched them trial, we've ticked off all their boxes, but we don't tell them. And they've got to find those ones, and they do. And they know which ones are the good ones, and they bring out the best in them, and a good trainer can keep a good dog on top.
And obviously the stud career with Paul Westerveld and his family, it's again another wonderful story.
And he's marvellous with them. He treats them like his own children, and he's asked us, can he keep Fernando after he's finished? And as much as I'd love to have him on my lounge, I couldn't break up that relationship.
Obviously, Jan, over the years, many people have referred to yourself in the early days as Princess Bale and then Queen Bale. Can I just say, I suppose through my own self, as a few may know, I've had a little bit of a health issue recently, but every 10 days or so you've called to see how I'm progressing. So there is definitely an angel in you. On behalf of all of greyhound racing, the memory of Paul Wheeler will never go, and we just wish the family all continued success. And as that sign says, simply the best, we will never have another Paul Wheeler. Jan, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ron.